Hey everybody, welcome to the latest episode of the Rock Experience with Mike Brunn. On this episode, Vincent LaRussa and I are going to talk all about the Van Halen Sammy Hagar era. We figured with the newest box set Collection Volume 2 coming out, it was a great time to give our thoughts about what we thought of the Sammy Hagar era. We'll talk about our thoughts about him joining the band. We'll talk a little bit about each of the albums, as well as the Rarities album that's going to be part of the box set. Lots to cover in this episode. I think you guys are going to really enjoy it. So let's jump in and let's get started. Hey everybody, welcome to the latest episode of the Rock Experience with Mike Brunn. Today I'm with my buddy, my comrade. A few episodes in a row now you've been appearing. Please welcome to the show, Mr. Vincent LaRussa.
Probably because nobody else is available. You got to go dig deep into the barrel, the bottom of the barrel.
Not
this
at all.
This is the bottom of the barrel episode.
That's right. That's right. When all else fails, I get Vincent on. No, the reality is, I probably have right now 70 or 80 press-related emails in my inbox that I should be looking through to get guests on, but I just, I've been on the road for the last like 3+ weeks, so I've had no time to pursue that. And then you said, hey, we should do this episode. Van Halen's got this Sammy box set coming out. We should talk about it. And I'm like, of course, you and I could always make time at whatever off hour we want to discuss this. I don't have to worry about, arranging my schedule around some celebrity. It's only you.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah,
I appreciate that, I guess.
It was funny because when I was starting this, I didn't want to start with, hey, everybody. I was going to start with the, hello, babe. Because I thought that might be more appropriate, but I was like, nah, I got to go with the traditional introduction to the show. But I was tempted to give the Sammy Hagar intro. So
I wouldn't blame you there.
Yeah, but so I was glad you reached out to me to talk about this, because I think this is one, I'll say the Sammy Hagar years, that you and I have maybe even more than slightly different opinions on. So this will be fun. I have a feeling we might go a little head to head on this one in a couple of cases. And my gut tells me that more people will probably side with you than me. They might want to boot me off my own show after this one. Who knows? But
hostile takeover.
That's right. That's right. But let's start here. Do you remember when you first became a Van Halen fan?
That's a great question. Well, I think
I want the exact date and time, by the way.
Yeah. So I'll give you one of my earliest memories. I had got my first drum set, the Labaz.
I remember that drum set.
And I had a friend who I might have mentioned on the show, my friend Brian, who could play guitar. He had moved onto the block recently, and it was quite impressive because I was 13 years old and he was 13, and he's playing like, Crazy Train and Dust in the Wind, and I was like, wow, I couldn't even, barely play a drum beat. And I found, like, even back then, I think I had, and maybe drummers are going to take a little offense to this, but I just always felt like, wow, guitar is so much more technical to play. You can't, if you have just natural ability to play drums on your chest.
I was going to say, I can play them on my chest.
Right. Doing that kind of stuff. That if you had some sort of sense of, a rhythm, or, being able to disconnect your limbs so you're not, hitting the same, because it's funny when you go to see somebody play drums, they're like,
yes,
they're all, exactly. What I mean? Because they can't disconnect. And their
feet are like all
the
at the
independence.
Same time.
That's right. And so I remember begging him, saying, I just got this drum set, and we've tried to figure out when I got it. Was I 14? I think I was 14 to 15, because soon thereafter is when we kind of reconnected and started our band.
Yes. Image.
And I actually have a recording of me in my basement with him recording "You Really Got Me," the Van Halen version, with my
Okay.
one beat. With my one beat, I had no bass guitar. He had no bass guitar. He did the bass with the electric guitar, and somehow I didn't have a 4-track. I didn't have a 2-track. I managed a way to cleverly do an overdub. Back then. So that I remember. So I mean, that's already. I'm trying to think if that was before 1984, obviously, when Jump and all that came out, because obviously I was well immersed into Van Halen by then, and I remember my cousin Beagle, yes Beagle, had Diver Down before that. So I remember I don't remember late 70s being a Van Halen fan at all. I just don't honestly remember. I'm thinking it's around 82, around that time frame, where at least I had heard like You Really Got Me and some stuff. But I as a matter of fact, I think I had shown it on another show. I think when we reviewed the first Van Halen record, I have the copy that you got me for my birthday, whatever year that was. So I didn't get Van Halen 1 until probably I was 16 at that point. But that's about
so
the
at
time,
that point you're talking like 86 or so, right? Just
right, 85, 86, which is about the time when did Eat 'Em Smile come out in 86? Or was that 85? I always
good. I was gonna say it was 86, but you might be right. It might be 85.
Yeah, because I always remember 5150, I think, is 85. I think,
I think they're just a few months apart from each other. If I remember.
Exactly.
Eat 'Em Smiling 5150. So.
But
I think I think we saw Dave in 86 on that tour, right? Because I just
that's why I'm thinking 86.
I think we saw him in October of 86 at the Garden with Cinderella opening. Again, why I remember nonsense like that, but I want to say it was like October 14th-ish or something like that at the Garden.
5150 was released on March 24th, 86.
86. So both of them are 86.
85. Yeah.
So you have the computer in front of you. So now I'm going to ask you just to Google for kicks and giggles for myself, David Lee Roth, Madison Square Garden, 86, and look up what that date was, because I'm like October of 86, and for some reason I'm on the 14th, but I'm sure I'm wrong about that. But I just want to see what kind of nonsense I do remember, and what do I confuse in my head.
Eat 'Em Smile Tour 86. Let's see. Concert, David Madison Square Garden. Let's see. Look, I think I'm bringing up the set list actually, which is kind of cool.
Oh, that's right.
October 4th, 1986.
October 4th. Oh, look at that. And today is October 4th. So it was.
Wow. Talk about it. Ladies and gentlemen, this was not planned.
So this is 37 years ago. So that's weird because I thought it was October 14th, but it was October 4th. So it's weird how the brain remembers certain things, right? I'm sitting here not having a clue, and I'm like, it was October 14th, 1986. So it was October 4th. So 37 years ago today, if my math is right off the top of my head.
Yep. I'm not going to try to figure that one out.
Oh, man, but that's good memory. So
let me ask you this question. I mean, this is not a David Lee Roth, but I'm just curious because I just saw it. What was the last song in the encore he did?
Boy, you're saying at that concert.
Think of the discography at that point. Think about his record.
So I was originally going to say it was a Van Halen song, but clearly you're pointing me towards Eat 'Em and Smile. It wasn't That's Life, was it?
No.
No, what was it? I don't know. I don't remember.
California Girls.
Wow. Okay.
That seems like an odd
it is
choice. I don't see that as an encore song. I mean, it was hugely popular. I mean, it was before the Eat 'Em and Smile. His first song in the encore was Jump, and then it was that. So I just found that. I was like, wow. First of all, I don't remember that at all.
No, I remember that show very vividly.
I mean, the fact that he did On Fire that night, we must have been on fire.
Oh, we were throwed. We were thoroughly throwed.
Throwed. Yes, yes. Billy, if you're watching this, we were thoroughly throwed, which means anybody's wondering what thoroughly throwed. Throwed, like how your throw level is excitement level, right?
Yes,
so when you say you're thoroughly throwed, means you're thoroughly excited.
Yes.
If you say your throw level's at 10, that's at the maximum. If you want to go to Spinal Tap, you could
go to 11.
You could go to 11. So, but that's what. And if anybody's been confused, because I think somebody in the last show had commented, you guys say this thing all the time.
Yes,
and I'm not quite
sure. Yes, that's right.
which was one of our most favorite comments ever.
I think
But
that person might have even Googled thoroughly thode or thode. And no, you're never going to find out idiocy in
yeah,
the internet. And no, this is something we've been saying since probably
we
the 80s, probably at that David Lee Roth concert.
probably
In fact, wait, hold on. I have an audio recording of us seeing Bon Jovi in '87, right? And if I remember right, when they started doing Wanted Dead or Alive, you hear either you or our friend Sal, I'm all toenails, I'm thode. So
it's
it goes
true.
back to the 80s.
It does. It does.
That might predate Sammy joining Van Halen. How about that?
I think you're right. I think you're
Yes.
right.
So all right. So you were a Van Halen fan, I think, a little bit before me, right? Because you're saying maybe around the Diver Down period, you remember at least being aware
Yeah,
of
because
them.
my cousin got the record,
Right.
and I remember hearing like Pretty Woman and what was the other cover they did on that
Dancing in the
record?
Streets.
Dancing in the
Yeah.
Streets. I remember that.
Just to name two of the covers on that album, because
Yeah, there's a what
yeah, exactly.
half of it's right.
Exactly. No,
Yeah.
I don't remember being a Van Halen fan until
Van
1984.
Halen.
A Fan Halen. A Fan Halen. I see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Until 1984, which was right around, I was 13 going on 14 at that time. I don't recall hearing any Van Halen before that, but certainly by the time the 1984 album came out and Jump was a hit and Panama was all over MTV, I remember, definitely getting into them, Hot for Teacher, all of those songs.
Mhm.
I remember, certainly, in fact, one of my very first bootleg video concerts was Van Halen in Montreal on the 1984 show, on the 1984 tour. So, I definitely got into Van Halen at that time. But what's odd for me also is around that same time, give or take probably a few months, I also started to get into Sammy Hagar a bit, right? So I remember watching the show The Rock Palace, because Ozzy Osbourne was going to be on, right? And I had just seen Ozzy in concert a few months prior. So Ozzy was going to be on, and it was Ozzy, Rat, and Sammy Hagar. I had never heard of Rat at this point yet either. I became a Rat fan after watching the show that night. And I also became a Sammy Hagar fan that night. They showed only two songs from the concert that he did, and it was the songs Red and There's Only One Way to Rock. And I'm like, these are good songs. I like this. And I went and picked up the VOA album, which obviously became a hit with I Can't Drive 55 and all of that. But so for me, it's kind of interesting how my Van Halen fandom and my Sammy Hagar fandom almost started at the same time, unknowns to anybody at that moment, that the two were going to be coming together very soon. In fact, yeah, I found this. I don't know if you remember this. Do you remember me having that 45?
Yes.
And the reason I bought that is because it was red vinyl. So this is probably one of my first quote unquote collectibles that wasn't Kiss, because I had the album already. So I didn't need to buy the 45, but I'm like, I had to buy that because it was on red vinyl, which was very unusual at that time to have colored vinyl like that. So,
and the one I did try to steal.
Yes, I'm sure you probably did more than once. And I still do like that song.
You know what? When I first saw that, I said, "Oh shit, I returned it."
That's great. Oh man, but I still love that song, Two Sides of Love. I happen to like that album. I was probably more into Van Halen than Sammy Hagar at that time. But my point is, I was certainly into both of them, and I didn't have either of their back catalogs at that moment. But I was into both of their quote unquote new stuff at that time. So obviously, then Van Halen is riding high, a lot of success in 1984. And then the rumors started. And I remember hearing the rumors at the time that Dave was leaving or being kicked out, depending on what point of view you have, what story you believe, and that somebody was going to be taking his place.
Or who was telling the story?
Right. Or who was telling the story. And then eventually they announced Sammy Hagar was going to be in the band. And honestly, it wasn't like I sat there saying, oh my God, how could that be? How, Sammy's his own, artist in his own right. I was like, right, yeah, that's cool. I didn't have this deep connection with either one of them at the time. But do you remember your thoughts?
Yeah, I was like, how could they do that? This is Van Halen. Like, how do you replace David Lee Roth? I mean, I was definitely a little upset about it. I remember, but yeah, I just, I think I thought even at the time, like, how do you replace a David Lee Roth? But obviously,
Look, and I'll say this. Yeah, I'll say this. Decades later, there is no front man, no performer like David Lee Roth. I don't think in our generation anywhere, right? love him or hate him, man, that guy is he's an entertainer,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
what he brings to the band in that, I'll say, original era of the band is look, you can make a case that although the name of the band was Van Halen, the most important member, you can make a case was David Lee Roth, right? And that's to take nothing
And
away from Eddie and his guitar playing, but that's just how much of an impact that man had.
and supposedly he was the one who suggested calling the band Van Halen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, you know, I tried to think of this before we, connected to talk about this. Van Halen was right, at the highest point of their popularity at that point when Dave left and Sammy came in, maybe with the exception of AC/DC, right? When Bon Scott passed away, right? So that's a little bit different. I can't think of any band who replaced their lead singer at the peak of their popularity like that and went on to continue to have success the way they did with Sammy. Love it or hate it, right? That's a different conversation. But I can't think of any band. Again, I could say AC/DC, obviously, but it's different when the original lead singer passes away and there's no choice but to move on. Iron Maiden, obviously, with Bruce Dickinson, but they were not at the top. I mean, they really reached the higher points with Bruce. Could you think of any other band that was at their peak at that moment and changed lead singers with such success the way Van Halen did?
I don't think so. And no. I mean, I think it would be at the top of my head, right? I would just say, oh yeah, because why would you have to dig deep? Because it would be obvious.
Right. Exactly.
If somebody has an example of that, put it in the comments. That's all I'll say,
Yeah, no, I'd love to. Yeah, again, I acknowledge obviously AC/DC, different situation. Obviously Bruce Dickinson and Iron Maiden's incredible, coming in as the second singer, but nobody else at the peak like that, where the original lead singer goes on and does his own thing and solo albums, and like you said, we saw him in concert. It's just, But I say this all the time. We're going to talk a little bit about these Sammy albums. I also think in some ways Dave left or was fired, again, depending on which story you believe, at the perfect time to cement his legacy in the original formation of the band. And why do I say that? The criticism so many people have about the Sammy era is that it's too poppy, right? And we'll talk about that as we talk about the albums. But I say this, look at 1984 and all the keyboards on some of those songs, right? I'll Wait, right? Jump, obviously. I noticed that recent video leak that just came out, right? The great concert from 1984 with Dave, right? So if you haven't seen that, go check it out if you can find it online. And I was blown away watching that there's one song in that concert where neither Eddie nor Michael is playing a string instrument. They're both playing keyboards at the same time. There's not a single damn guy. It was I'll Wait.
Well, Jump too.
Or maybe it was Jump also. Yeah. So
I don't even think he does the guitar solo. Yeah, I remember.
So here it is, maybe arguably one of the greatest guitarists and guitar bands of all time. And their concerts in 1984 included at least one or more songs where nobody was even playing the damn string instrument on the stage, Yeah. So my point is, I think that the music was starting to change, driven by Eddie, right? And I love, Wolf always says, people argue which era is better, Dave or Sammy, or, nobody's going to really debate anybody else but those two. Or nobody's going to say Gary was the best era. No disrespect to Gary, who I happen to love, but Eddie was the one writing the music. Right? For all of those. I mean, I know Sammy played a hand in some of the songs writing, but Eddie was the driving force behind the music. And I think Eddie was, steering that ship more towards a pop sound. And, I think if Dave stayed, and some of those songs that are on 5150, supposedly Dave heard the music before they ever recorded the album, and he was excited to start writing lyrics. Yes, obviously the lyrics would be different, the vocal melodies would be different, but I do think some of that underlying music would have been the same. And I do believe that Van Halen would have gone down that pop route even more with Dave. And look, Dave was writing songs like Just Like Paradise, so it wasn't like he was going like all full-blown Metallica on people, I think Van Halen would have turned into that same popish band, even with Dave, and people would have looked down on those couple of albums. Just my opinion, but what do you think? Am I nuts?
Yeah, no, I don't think you're nuts. And I don't know if we're going to go into this. Dave brought a totally different attitude from Sammy.
Yes, true.
And I could start digging deep into my love for David Lee Roth, and not that I have a hatred for Sammy. That's and I'm not here to badmouth Sammy. That's not it. But the thing about Dave is that which he should get a tremendous amount of credit. And when I went back and listened to some of those the Sammy records, is there's a certain amount of cleverness that's not in the lyric writing. When you I mean, the other day I was thinking of covering when the Cradle Will Rock. You know, it's a great song, but I debated how many people really know it. I know it was on Van Halen one, or not Van Halen one, the best of Van Halen one, whatever they called it.
Right.
Right, best of.
Yeah, but best of both worlds or something like that.
Yeah, whatever. And I think because they had to put a song to represent, was that Women and Children First,
Yep.
right?
I think
But
so.
it's a great song.
Yeah.
It's an incredible song. We'll just read the lyrics and Dave's delivery. It's total drips of David Lee Roth's. You know, his humor, his craziness. It's just, and it's not, oh, I love you, I miss you, and like they didn't really write those kind of songs with Dave. You know what I mean? You know, and I think I want to know what the question was before I go on to this tangent.
But you know, wait, I'm going to interrupt you here for a moment, because I remember years ago hearing Dave talk about the song "Why Can't This Be Love," right? And they were asking him what he thought of it, and he's like, "Well, you know, I don't write lyrics like that. I would never be asking somebody why can't this be love." He goes, and I'm paraphrasing that. He goes,
"Yeah,
I'd be like, this isn't love. Get the fuck out of here. I don't give a shit." You know. So and you're right. No, definitely lyrically, they write very different from each other. And I've said this all the time. There's only one person that could have a breakdown in the song. Come on, Dave, give us a break. Hey, one break, and get away with it and be like, oh, this is really cool part of the song, right? And that's one of my all-time favorite Van Halen songs, right? But there's not many people that have that kind of charisma and character to pull off something like that.
Again, listen to that's in Unchained, right? So think of that. That song is incredible. It's an incredible song. I know Rick Beato recently, well, not recently, I just saw a video where he did his top 5 Van Halen songs, and I think that was his number one. And I think it was either Phil X or one of the other guys said that was, you know, their favorite. And he was just like, you know, he was saying the same thing. You know, David Lee Roth is an incredible singer, and he really is. I know he's not a great live singer, but to me, I know he gets so much shit about being a vocalist. There's his approach, that scream, that one is so difficult. It's just, his timing, you know, it's so original. It really is just so original. And that's where I separate. As great as Sammy is a singer and he has a higher range and all that, I just feel like that for originality, Dave is a much more, you know, original. Like when Dave created something, I don't feel like Sammy really created something new. Yeah, he's a great singer, but I know, like with Montrose and what he brought, and then what is so, you know, great stuff. I love some of the Montrose stuff. I've covered some of that stuff. Again, this is not a bash on Sammy thing. No. We're talking about the Sammy era, and we talked about Dave, and you know, like just kind of as a comparison going into these records. And these are just some of the thoughts when I started listening to the songs, you know. And I don't know if you want to go like record for record or whatever you want to do. Not every song.
No, let's not go every song, right? But I do want to go record to record. And to me, it was important to start this way because, again, whether you love Sammy or hate Sammy, and I happen to love Sammy, and I love the Sammy records with Van Halen. In fact, you know, probably I might be 55-45 in my Van Halen fandom towards Sammy over Dave. But there's, to me, and I know you're certainly the other way, and probably bigger split than 55-45. But the reason to me it's important to start this way, this conversation, is because you have to acknowledge what tough shoes Sammy had to fill. And, you know, to the point that you're making, spot on, I agree. There was nobody, and really hasn't been anybody like Dave before or since. And he's a character, and he's, you know, a great performer. I love the lyrics he wrote in the songs, and they're and I give, you know, Eddie and the band a lot of credit for going in a different direction and not trying to find a David clone, because I don't think that would have worked at all, you know. So I give them credit.
Let's just remember too, you know, you talk about the records, you know, keyboards got more and more embedded into pop. You know, there's a reason why Just Like Paradise came out, and why the record companies are pushing for certain things. It's not always, a lot of times it's not artist driven. You've heard so many stories where a band will be like, you know, like maybe an extreme. Can you write another
acoustic ballad, more than words?
More than words. I almost said all that words. All that words, more than words. All the words. You know, once you write that one thing that's hugely successful, the record companies like, ooh, they want more and they want more.
Of course.
And I think what makes, and I know I'm going backwards, what makes 1984 such a great record, Jump, Panama Hot for Teacher, 3 totally different songs, 3 totally different and amazing freaking songs, you know, some of the best music that's ever been recorded in rock and roll and heavy metal, in my opinion, you know.
And I'll say this, I still think Hot for Teacher is extremely overrated. I think there's better songs than that, even on that album. I'm not talking Jump or Panama. Yeah, I've always been lukewarm on Hot for Teacher, but it's a great album, and certainly your point about three very different styles of songs, you know, is very valid. And you know, again, that's what made it tough for somebody like Sammy to come in. Now, let me ask you this: do you remember the first? So obviously, the first single with Sammy was "Why Can't This Be Love." Do you remember hearing that for the first time?
Yeah, so I bought the record. I think when it first came out, I think I got it the first day, if I remember, and I brought it to my friend and who you knew, Mr. Robert Leota's house,
Yep.
and he was a huge Van Halen fan, and I had a feeling he was gonna like, you know, be like, oh, this is crap, you know, and we listened to that, you know, and it was the second song on it, right? Second song on fifth one, and we were listening to it, and he's like, to do like he did a Brunn, this is good. This is real good, you know,
wow.
like he was into it right away.
Uh-huh.
And I knew right away that song was great. I mean, from the moment I heard it, I was like, this is tremendous. And I remember, I don't know how long after that you guys had gotten that what was it, the Van Halen and New Haven, remember that videotape you had?
Yep.
And we were watching and we were like, if he says 5150 one more time, you
it's
remember
5150 time.
right, yeah. So I don't remember when that tape came out.
I think that concert was March of '86 at New Haven, if I remember right. Again, why I remember this nonsense, I don't know, but you can fact check me, or somebody can fact check me on that. So we probably were watching that later '86 time period, I would think.
Right. So, but yeah, I was excited. I got the record and I liked the record. You know, I don't know if I loved it. I don't remember that in that detail, but I thought it was a great record. And I just remember at that time, you know, being in high school and getting all the magazines and the wars that were going on. Who's better, Steve Vai, you know, and David Lee Roth saying this, and they were going back in the camps and, you know, reading each magazine. And it was really exciting to kind of, you know, when Eat 'Em and Smile came out, it was like, all right, which record is better? And there was a lot of that going on.
So let me ask you that then: Eat 'Em and Smile or 5150?
Well, you see, the thing is, I don't think there's any one song on Eat 'Em and Smile that's better than Why Can't This Be Loved? Period. End. You know, you know, I think, you know, in the end, I probably would go with 5150. I think Eat 'Em and Smile's got some good stuff on it. I don't think it's aged not nearly as well as 5150, in my opinion.
So even though the production on 5150 is,
I'm just gonna go into that, like those toms and those drums, it's egregious. But again, at the time, we didn't think that was the technology, that was the sound, that Simmons, not Gene Simmons, Simmons, Simmons drum sound. And thank God he kept his snare sound, because that's like the signature point of Alex and his cymbals.
And that's what I was just gonna say. So I remember the first time I heard "Why Can't This Be Love," and I was driving to my aunt's house with my parents, and they were listening to probably Z100 at the time in New York, right, top 40 radio station, and it came on, and I didn't hear them say beforehand, oh, there's the new Van Halen song. I don't know if they like put on the radio or changed the station and the song was on, but so I didn't know it was Van Halen, but I heard that snare drum and I'm like, that's Van Halen. This is the new Van Halen song. And I remember listening to it and being, again, I hate to use the expression, thoroughly thawed, right? And the album wasn't out yet. So, and I just remember being super like, wow, this is good. This is good. This is damn good. And, you know, I even found, so there was really no reason for me to do this other than, so you can see here, I have the single, right? And the reason I have the single is because I thought the song was so good, I couldn't wait for the album, which might have only come out a day or two later. I don't remember, but maybe I didn't have the money at that time to buy the full album. But I just loved the song that I had to get that song instantly. To this day, I know, man, I'm going to get flames for this comment right now. I know it. It might be my all-time favorite Van Halen song. Last year, I did my top 20 Van Halen songs on my Facebook page. I remember Unchained was number 2. Dance the Night Away was number 3. Why Can't This Be Love was number 1, right? I just absolutely love that song. It is the perfect, I want to say, pop rock song. What a perfect introduction to a new lead singer in the band. It really set them up for just huge success for the next decade with Sammy, you know, and to me, it was important to start off with our fandoms previously because, you know, I was both Sammy and Van Halen, so I had no allegiance to either one. And I heard this song, I'm like, man, this is a match made in heaven, these two. Whereas you were more of a Dave guy and still like you said, you heard it and you played it for a friend of yours and you're like, this is good. This is damn good. You know, so
Yeah,
it's really,
yeah,
to me,
yeah.
it was the perfect single to start off their Sammy days.
Oh yeah, and listen, at that point, I wasn't soured on the record at all.
Right.
I was listening to it. I was enjoying it. I was loving to do it. You know, it was it was again a great time to be a Van Halen fan again, because you
Yes.
didn't know what the fate of the band was going to be, who the singer was going to be. And it was exciting because now you had two products. You had Dave doing his thing, and you
Yes.
had Van Halen. It's like, oh, we got the best of both worlds. See what I did
Yeah,
there?
yeah.
Right.
You know, let me say this though. That is one of the Sammy songs with Van Halen I just don't like. I don't know
Mm,
why. It's
yeah.
so funny that's like one of the ones that most people say are a classic from that era.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw Sammy last year in concert. He did it. I'm like, boo, boo, boo. There's better
Yeah.
songs on this album. And then I started, you remember when
Yeah.
5150, the album came out? What song was I infamous with, right? You remember Summer Nights, right?
Oh yeah.
To this day,
God
if it's
damn.
the summer and that song
God
comes
damn.
on,
Sweating in your room with a ceiling fan that's doing nothing but blowing hot air on us, making us sweat more.
oh man, to this day, I still, if it's the summertime and I hear that song, it just puts me back to being a teenager. I
Yeah.
absolutely love that song.
Yeah. No, it's a great
So
song.
yeah,
No
so
doubt.
when I saw Sammy last year and he's doing best of both worlds, I'm like, boo, 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 Summer Nights,
Yeah.
do that instead.
Yeah.
So yeah, to me, it's a strong album. If you look song for song, I mean, the song 5150, I know we were joking about the concert. I think that's a great song. The last song, Inside, is I could take it or leave
Yeah.
it, but
Mm-hmm.
it's a strong album. It's really, to me, it set the tone. Like I said, not just the single, but the whole album really set the tone. The production, when I hear it sometimes, and those, what is it? The
Cinnamon
not Simmons,
drums.
but yeah, the Simmons
Cinnamon
drums.
drums. Yeah.
I'm like, yeah. But like you said, it's a
Yeah.
product of the time.
It's a product of the time, and it doesn't. I'd rather hear that than the brick walled, overproduced records of. They're not doing so much that anymore, these days.
So would you
But
rather hear the production of Kiss Monster or 5150?
5150.
You didn't even hesitate.
Well, I'd rather just hear that record first of all.
Okay. Well, I didn't say which album is better. I
I
said
know,
just
but no
production.
production. Yeah, no 5150 because it's still. Even with the toms and whatever, Why Can't This Be Love is a wonderfully produced record, and
Yep.
we should mention that Mick Jones was producer on that record and barely did anything. It's really,
Mhm.
as we've come to find out, that Don Lindy was doing a lot of the stuff with Van Halen, especially when Eddie started recording stuff in his 5150 studios. I think, and I don't know the exact story, but Ted Templeman is the producer, and I think at the time, the record label's got to have a producer, and he's attached to the record. I don't know if they do that, because it contractual. They'll say with Warner Brothers, you're going to be producing Van Halen, you're going to be the Doobie Brothers, whomever. I mean,
Right.
he produced a lot of great records.
Well, so I had, could you see there?
Yeah.
The back of my 45, Sammy,
Yeah.
he was producing Sammy Hagar also before he joined the band. So go figure, right?
Right. Yeah. So amongst other great artists,
of course. Yep.
But yeah, I agree with you. 5150. The funny thing is, I feel like the records in the order they came out are is the order of the best to the worst. And I know I'm
Ooh,
kind of jumping ahead, but that's
Interesting.
kind of how I feel in doing a kind of look back.
Well, I'll debate you on that as we go through the records, but
Yeah.
I'll save that for right now, right? So,
Yeah.
all right. So obviously, we both think 5150 was a strong record and certainly a strong introduction to Sammy and Van Halen. So then let's talk about Meet the Beatles. I mean, OU812 next, right? So,
Yeah. Or Kiss first album.
Oh, Kiss first album, exactly, right?
Yeah.
So, obviously, I mean, tip of the hat, obviously, to the Beatles on the album cover. I'll start off by talking to you. Said it goes from best to worst. I'll say this: OU812 to me is the absolute worst Van Halen album of any singer, and I might include the Gary album as well in that. So, I even went back and listened to it before when I knew when we were going to do this session. I was like, is my opinion, changed over the years? And from the start of Mine Oh Mine, I like, with all the synths on this record, I'm like, yeah, I'm not feeling.
So you like this record?
Yeah, I'm trying to think, what song do I like? How about that? Like, I like When It's Love, and I know a lot of people don't. It's very popish. And maybe Cabo Wabo.
You don't like Finish What You Started?
Yeah, hate that damn song.
Do you like Finish What You Started?
I don't know what song annoys me more. Finish What You Started or Best of Both Worlds. Both, which is funny because they're two, big hits with Sammy, and neither of them was I ever a big fan of. 5150, Best of Both Worlds is the second worst song on the album to me, behind Inside. And I don't know if I would say Finish What You Started. It's definitely not the worst song on OU812, but that's more about the other songs on the album and less about what I feel about that song. I am not, I'll say this. There are a couple of songs on OU812, Source of Inflection, I think it was called. So Source of Infection, not Inflection, Infection. And AFU, which have that classic Van Halen sound. It has those like Eddie Van Halen riffs that, you could have heard Dave writing lyrics over those songs to me. That's probably the closest sounding musically songs that Van Halen came to record with Sammy compared to Dave. I just don't think they're good songs. What's the ballad on that song, on that album?
When It's
Feel
Love.
So Good? No. On the second half of the album. There's like Feel So Good.
Feel So Good. Yeah. If you want to even call that a ballad.
Yeah, freaking! I want to shove that keyboard up his behind me.
Wow, this is fucking harsh.
And remember, this is somebody who loves the Sammy records, but this one just
I'm not nearly as harsh as you on this.
No, I knew we would feel different about this.
Again, I had this record. I think when it first came out, I remember really liking the record. Yeah, I think if I went back and really, gave it a, multi-listen, there's certain things that maybe hasn't aged as well. It's almost like a David Lee Roth, Eat 'Em and Smile record. As much I love that record.
Oh, Eat 'Em and Smile is 1,000 times better than this.
Yeah, right. So, but I still think it's strong. And you know what? You see, this is why I like some of this record. And I know you don't like Finish What You Started, but to me, it's like, come on, baby. Please. No, and besides that, I like the fact that it doesn't sound like a Van Halen song. At the time, I was like, wow, this is kind of really different. Eddie's approach and the guitar playing, the vocal stylings, that little chicken picking song.
It's a well-written song.
I guess those are the kind of things, and I'll get to it when we go down the line with the records, that I felt started to lose. And I think, again, I don't want to jump the gun. I feel like, at times you're Eddie Van Halen and people hear you as Eddie Van Halen. And how do you reinvent yourself? It's like Madonna. Let's do the Madonna reference. Or, Madonna always felt like she had to reinvent herself, right? Yes. Every record. And really, if you think of, the first album, which I don't remember, was it self-titled? What was the first album?
The self-titled.
Okay, right, and then you had
Like a Virgin,
and then you had I think it was True Blue, and then Like a Prayer.
Yep.
Right. So every one of those records, she kind of reinvented musically, even. You know what I mean?
It's funny because obviously I didn't know you would bring this up, and certainly we're not here to talk about Madonna. But I was just watching the True Blue video last night, not the song, but the video for that. I was like, not only is that a damn good song, but exactly what you said, how she completely reinvented her style and her image is just, people forget that.
Yeah, you go from, Like a Virgin
to right?
or La Isla Bonita, which is like brilliantly recorded, written, and this is not a Madonna thing, but what I'm saying is that what I felt like with this record is, at least I was hearing some things of like, all right, sonically, of that kept me interested in the record. Maybe it wasn't the best songs and they were, again, jump ahead to a Right Now, which, I think people could maybe go either way with that song. I mean, obviously it's kind of like this epic keyboard thing, and they had that whole video, which was brilliantly done, and it was hugely successful, and a great theme for a record and for a song, and, tremendously done, But again, the stuff there, keyboard wise and Van Halen wise, is kind of like Eddie had kind of done that before. It's not like, you heard that, like, oh my God, what's this new sound of Van Halen?
Right. In fact, that point, I think was originally written around the 1984 era, the music.
Right, exactly. So, and you kind of get a sense of that. But again, I don't think this is a bad record at all. I also it has a kind of, again, this whole era of our life, this 85, 86, 87. I remember, being on I remember being the front of my house with the record and showing
Yep.
one of our friends, Mr. Fagowski, like, you know,
Mhm.
and we were looking at the record, like it just gives you, and maybe that plays into when
Sure,
you rate these things, you know,
of
a
course.
certain fondness you have for the record, you
And
know.
you know, and so, I mean, I agree with you 100%. There's certainly something about like music that you listen to in your teenage years that you just always seem to gravitate towards more so
Yeah.
in the teenage to early 20 years. I think just most people gravitate towards that
And,
stuff.
and the thing too, like a song on Black and Blue, like when he's playing the riffs, you could actually hear him sliding his hand, like he's not trying to be technically quiet, like he's,
Right.
you know, he's playing the chord, the riff or the chords there, and you hear him like, I kind of like that kind of thing. It's like, you know, things like that sonically are what interests me, you know,
Right.
when I
Yeah.
when I
And you
go
see
back.
that's a single. I was always like, what were they thinking making that the lead single? And
And
I
I
know what
agree,
they were
and I
thinking. They
agree.
were trying to, cater to the people who like the hard rock stuff, but
Yeah.
to me, it's a weak song.
Mm,
Not that there's a hard rock song on the album that I think would have made a better single. I mean, he's certainly not going to release "Sucker" in a three-piece as the same lead singer
well, that's
single.
true. That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
I
you're right.
want to really like "Mine Oh Mine," right? Because I like. I mean, it's an interesting song, but it's just again, it's like when people say that Van Halen was too poppy with Sammy. Of course, they think of songs like "When It's Love," which I happen to like that song a lot. I have no problems with that song. But to me, this whole album just has like a lot of pop elements to it, and
Well,
to lead off an album with a song like "Mine Oh Mine" when you're Van Halen is surprising to
I'll
me.
tell you why that is.
Why is that? Tell me, my friend.
Well,
Tell all the
when you leave,
viewers
oh
and
no, no, no,
listeners.
no, I'm going to go back to Black and Blue.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Okay, think about the lyrical content of that song, and when
Okay.
this record was released. This
Okay.
is not factual. This is my opinion.
Go ahead.
Right? The record
Mhm.
was released in '88. Right?
Yep. Mhm.
Pour Some Sugar on Me. I just was released on September '87.
Okay.
Right? This became like the strip club.
Uh
You know,
huh.
even Kiss was trying to do, what was that horrible song? Bang Bang
Bang
You,
bang you and read my
Read My
body.
Body. Let's put the X in sex.
Right.
You know,
But
they
I
were
don't
all
think
trying.
black as much as I don't like Black and Blue to me is nothing like those songs.
It's yeah, but it's a slow. If you look at the tempo wise and
Uh-huh.
where it sits sonically, it's not that I have this all the strip club expertise, but I could see it as Van Halen thinking like this could be a song,
Interesting.
that you can hear in a strip club. You know, you're not gonna hear
Interesting.
Mine on Mine.
I've never known. No, you're not. No, you definitely won't hear
That's
mine
that
on
dun,
mine.
dun, 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 dun,
Uh-huh.
dun, it's got that
I've
kind of,
never thought that before. That's interesting.
I'm just thinking, what would be the,
Right.
I again, this is not any fact. This is just
Right.
me thinking and looking at the timeline, and we I think it's not. I think a lot of bands were trying to catch the Def Leppard "Pour Some Sugar on Me"
Absolutely.
success, and quite honestly, I don't think anybody ever surpassed it. You know what I mean? As
I
far as
100%
making
agree with
a
you.
better song, but
Although I
yeah.
still Black and Blue.
And it did
Yeah,
reach #1 on the Billboard album Rock Tracks, by the way, Black and Blue.
no, I'm sure it did. I'm sure when it
Yeah,
came out, everybody was excited to get a new Van Halen song. It's a
yeah.
little bit of a rocker, So I just, to me, it was always odd that it was the second to last song on the album, was the lead single off the album. It
Hmm.
just seemed like it was in a spot on the album that was a throwaway, right? Usually the second to
Yeah,
last song is not your lead single.
yeah.
And it just, to me, I mean, the standout track on this album, hands down, is "When It's Love." And I know a lot of people
Hmm.
don't like it because it's poppy or whatever. I think it's a great, well-written song, catchy as anything. The whole ending, na na na, is like again a little bit of a throwback to the Beatles, a little
Yeah.
bit, right? So I have nothing but love for that song, but the rest of the album is just, for me, very. This was a huge step down for me as a fan. 5150 to
Mm.
OU812, which I should also say some people believe is a little slap towards Dave with "Eat 'em and Smile," right? Eat 'em and smile, and then
Yeah,
U812, right? I don't
yeah,
know if that's true or not, but I've heard that on multiple occasions. That's a little bit
yeah.
of a.
It seems logical.
Yeah, it seems like it's
Otherwise,
like a little bit of a
yeah,
response to Dave, whatever. I
yeah.
just wish the album was stronger, but I'm interested then as we move into the next two albums, because you said the albums get weaker as they go along, and I just pretty much said I think OU812 is the worst Van Halen album.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, if you're curious, I mean, I had this on cassette. This was my first Van Halen
Which
record
one?
on cassette.
Which one?
Well, the next record,
For Unlawful Knowledge?
yeah.
Yep.
And I went back and I listened to it, and I still thought it was a good record.
Yep.
I'm looking at the standout tracks, and when I remember listening and sitting, on the train and listening to this record, I can remember like the stops on the F train and the R train when I was
No,
listening.
really,
It's so
that's so
funny,
funny.
and what Walkman I had.
Hmm.
But it definitely has some standout tracks. And I think it's a little unfair because I think there's more tracks on this record
Yes.
than so, and one's an instrumental. But yeah, I still think this is a good record. I still don't think it's as good as 5150. And quite honestly, I think that's the best record of the Van Halen era.
Hmm.
I mean Van
Of
Hagar
the
era.
I know
Yeah,
what you meant.
yeah. But I think there's obviously it's got Right Now, Top of the World. I think it's a great song. I think was Pound Cake was the song where he had the Makita drill and
Yep. Hmm.
that was the whole
Yep.
thing. Oh my God, he's made a drill. That was like um there's definitely some good stuff on here for sure.
Yeah.
For
Yeah. I
sure.
think this album is far better than OU812. I'll even go so far as to say this potentially could be one of my top 3 Van Halen albums. That's how much I like
Mm,
this. I really think that, song for song, this album, I mean, it's just, I happen to love the song The Dream Is Over is one of my, top 10 Van Halen songs of all time.
mm, yeah.
Top of the World is also probably a top 15 Van Halen song for me. Pound Cake, I think, is great. Again, I'm usually not like this, but I think one of the weakest songs on the album is Right Now. Although I think the video was great. The video they did for the song, I
Hmm.
thought was spot on. As a song, I think it's okay, but I just think this whole album is, to me, it's excellent. And again, and maybe saying Right Now is one of the worst songs on the album is, for me, again, maybe a testament to the songs on the album and just how strong I think it is. It was also, for me, the first time I saw Van Halen in concert was 1991, which was on this tour. So I think at this point my Van Halen fandom was maybe at one of the highest points of my life.
Hmm.
I really took to this album, and it's interesting. I was thinking of this. I have said multiple times on this very podcast that my first CD ever was Kiss Revenge. And
Mm.
I've come to realize as we prepared for this that I've been lying to all the viewers and listeners, because I absolutely have For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge on CD, not on vinyl. That came out in June of 1991, almost a full year before Revenge. I saw Van Halen on that tour. I loved this album from the moment it came out. So clearly, Revenge was not my first CD. And I began to wonder, was this my first CD? Because
Hmm.
certainly OU812, I have the album. For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge, I have the CD. And I was trying to remember what CDs did I have before this, and I'm hard pressed to think of one. So I'm now saying I'm changing my story from the last 250 episodes about this podcast, and I'm saying my first CD might have been For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge, Van Halen.
No, I mean, look, I'm not going to disagree that I think it's a good record.
Do you have the track list in there in front of you?
I do.
Read it off.
What do you? Okay.
Just read it
Pound
off.
Pound Cake, Judgment Day,
Good
Spank,
song.
Run Around, Pleasure Dome,
Run Around. Great song. I love that
yeah,
song.
In and Out, Man on a Mission, The Dream Is Over, Right Now, 316 instrumental, and Top of
Yep.
the World.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few, I'll say, album tracks on the album there, but
Hmm.
there's no friggin' sucker in a 3-piece suit on this. That's for sure.
Yeah.
There's no Inside. I think I do like this better. Let me rephrase that. I know I like this better than 5150, but again, that just is because how much I think this album, song for song, is probably, in my opinion, the best Sammy album they did, song for song. There's other
Hmm.
albums that have songs I like better. Like you said, there's no Why Can't This Be Love on this album.
Hmm.
But I do love Top of the World. I do love The Dream Is Over, Pound Cake, few others that just, it's a really, really good album. The fact that OU812 was so weak and then they came back with such a strong album for me is, kudos to them. So I
Hmm.
will disagree
Hmm.
with you that OU812 is better than this. I strongly disagree.
All right, that's fair. That's fair.
You're
I'm
supposed to
not gonna
argue
debate.
with me.
I mean, I think again, I think what's feeding into my feeling of OU812 is more sentimental.
Yep.
Um, being on Night Range's Sentimental Street, I think that's what it, you know. And again, it's a little unfair. There's more songs on this record. I mean, how many
Yeah.
songs are on?
11 or
On
12 on this.
that's
Maybe
and
9 on OU812, I think.
Yeah, 9. Yeah. So, but yeah, I can see what you're saying. There are definitely a couple duds on OU812. You know.
Yeah. Yep.
Um,
Yep. So then I think, correct me if I'm
and
wrong. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead. No,
And we
you.
should also mention, this released June 17th of 91, really before the whole grunge thing really hit,
Right.
where this kind of music was really still kind of in style or in
Yes.
whatever,
Yeah.
which we
Which
could
is,
get
I'm
to.
glad you brought that up actually, because when I saw Van Halen on this tour, which was November of 91, late November, like November 24th, at the Meadowlands. Again, you could fact check me on the date, the 24th, but it was late November of 91. And the opening band was Alice in Chains.
No.
Yep. So, that was obviously the start of grunge. We were right on the eve. But I love, one of the things I love is at that time, there was no grunge or 80s rock or hair metal. It was just all rock, and people, didn't think twice of the fact that I'm pretty sure it was Alice in Chains, not Soundgarden. I'm almost positive it was Alice in Chains opened the show. And people really think, hey, why are they having this grunge band open for them? It was just a new rock band out there at the time.
Right. Yeah.
But that's I think a good segue into the fourth album and final one with Sammy, right? Which came out in 1995, which is right at like the tail end of the grunge era. So am I right in saying in the early 90s, maybe your Van Halen fandom drifted a little bit? Or am I wrong?
Well, I think in general, that was a very weird time, and we've covered this in other. I really kind of fought against the whole grunge thing, Pearl Jam, Nirvana, Soundgarden. I really wasn't listening to that. I think I don't want to repeat myself. I was listening to like the Chili Peppers and some other records that were coming out at the time. Maybe in the more pop, whatever. But yeah, I kind of on all this kind of like I wasn't buying the Motley Crue records of that. I wasn't buying the Rat or Skid Row or Warrant or any of that. I kind of I got pissed off. They, like, again, as I always said, they killed my hair metal, and I was like going on another train. And because I never even owned this record. I didn't even own this record. I never bought it on CD. I never bought it on. Well, I don't think it was ever released on vinyl until.
No, I don't think so.
Until
now.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess so. At that point.
Yeah.
It's not that I lost. Like I would listen to a Van Halen. I mean, I remember. Around that time is when they came out. When they come out with the best of both worlds. That was around.
No, that was after this. That was.
No, I know it was after this, but wasn't. It was still late '90s, I think.
You could check. I thought it was in the early 2000s, but that best of albums don't overly excite me usually. So
yeah,
I thought it was like 2002 or 3. Because they toured with Sammy in 2004.
96.
90. Okay, so I am dead wrong.
Yeah, because the only reason why, because I remember a friend of mine who was working at a certain company, and I used to listen to that CD in the car.
Okay.
And I remember him commenting on, I think it was "Why Can't This Be Love?" It's like, this song is incredible. It's just written so well. Like, and that's why I knew it had to be.
Gotcha.
Well,
they put out a few greatest hits compilations at that time. I know.
No, so what you're thinking, Best of Both Worlds is 2004.
Okay, that's what I was thinking.
I'm talking about the Best of Volume 1. That's what I'm thinking.
Gotcha. Okay, no, I was talking about Best of Both, because I'm like, there was some new Sammy songs I thought.
Yeah,
no.
I'm sorry. I was talking before about I brought up what the hell song I was talking about? Not Unchained. The other one I thought of covering. Remember I said before?
Oh, and The Cradle Will Rock.
Right. I said it was on that. That's the record I was talking about. That's
Gotcha.
the Volume 1.
Okay, yeah.
So you kind of looked at me a little confused, like, wait, is that a record? Is that talking about that?
Right. Well, because again, there was a few different greatest hits packages in that like 5-7 year period. So they start to get even a little blurry to me, which is which.
And it was
the one
on
you're
that,
talking about. Okay, yeah, the one you're talking about had a black cover, if I remember right, the Van Halen logo on it, right?
Yes.
Whereas the one I was talking about had a red cover, like Eddie Van Halen's guitar. Right. Okay. Right. Yeah. So I got the record straight in my head. But you see, for me in the mid 90s, I didn't get out of the music that I loved in the 80s into early 90s, right? And I loved Nirvana at that time, and I still do, and I still think Nevermind is potentially one of the greatest albums of the last 20-30 years, right? But I also still listened to whatever the new Dokken album was at the time, or whatever the new Motley Crue album was at the time. And I still think Generation Swine is maybe one of my top 2 or 3 favorite Motley Crue albums, which I know most people strongly disagree with me on. And I was listening to the new Van Halen album. So when Balance came out, I got it. And I remember watching in 95, they had a pay-per-view special, if I remember, from Toronto, which was a live concert. I remember staying home and watching it and paying to watch the pay-per-view that night. I was still very much into Van Halen. And, you know, I will say this, I happen to think the Balance album is I love it. I think it's a great album. So I know you think it's the worst Sammy Hagar album. I go back and forth sometimes between this and For Unlawful Knowledge, which album I like better. I will say it might be Van Halen's heaviest album. And I know some people might point to like Fair Warning or something like that. But, you know, there's songs like Don't Tell Me What Love Can Do on this album, which I just... I love the way Sammy's voice sounds in the song. I love the heaviness of the song. I just, I'm a big fan of this album. So you think it's the worst Sammy Hagar album, and I can make a case on any given day it might be my favorite Sammy Hagar album.
And I'll tell you why. Because when I listened to it, quite honestly, and I'm telling the truth here, I hadn't listened to the song since it came out. You know, I might have heard it when it first came out. I gave it for the show. I gave it a quick listen. Yeah. You know. And the thing that I got out of listening from it was there was nothing new on it. Eddie Van Halen at that point kind of, I don't want to use an expression, I'll say it in another way. You know, he had exhausted all his resources, I felt. Like, I just felt like there was nothing that sonically sounded new. And, you know, I got to put myself at the time capsule, you know?
Right.
And the progression of the records as they came out, it sounded, in a lot of ways, except for a couple things, it sounded predictable to me. You know, the songs with the, you know, they use that so many times with that. You know, to me, the standout track on this record is "Feeling." I think that was the best thing that they did.
I'm so glad you brought that up. Yes.
Yeah, because when I listened to that, I was like, now if this record had more of this, that's what I'm fucking talking about. Because this song is incredible. This song is like,
it's got, I think, my favorite Eddie Van Halen solo this side of Eruption, right? I mean, it's incredible.
Like when I heard that, like every song I was listening to, I heard, and I think the solo he did on Big Fat Money was kind of cool, if I remember. That was like a standout thing. See, I kind of do remember these things. Yeah. But you know, there were those things that were the standout moments, but lyrically and Sammy, and I was just like, I just felt reused to me. A lot of it just felt not bad, you know, not like there wasn't songs that, you know, I Can't Stop Loving You, obviously trying to write that hit song. It's like it was that stereotypical Sammy Van Halen kind of formulaic thing, you know. Very well done. I
think it's great.
Very well done. I said very well done. Yes. You know, but you know, not enough. I thought was, you know, it's a strong track. There were some good moments on here. But to me, it didn't feel like, okay, I felt like, you know, maybe Eddie had run out of gas, you know? It's like, and then I heard Feeling, I'm like, what the fuck? Where did this come from?
Right, yep.
Why they, I mean, I guess you want to say, you know, they Vanessa Williams this one and they saved the best for last. I don't know, but, you know, I was just like, sonically, that part when it goes in the middle, I was like, "Oh shit, that's what I'm talking." And then the fucking guitar solo, and then there's a waste of time with these instrumentals in between. I'm like, this is just like a total waste. Like, did they have to get a certain length for the record? And that was just total horseshit, in my opinion. I mean,
they were struggling, you know, in relationships between, you know, the Van Halen brothers and Sammy at that time. So I wonder how much of that was also, you know, they just didn't work hard enough on some of the songs, and they just, all right, this will be an instrumental. It's purely speculation, but I do know that there was relationship problems at this time.
I mean, it says the album length is 53 minutes, but this is in the era of CDs. Right. So you remember, you know, it's different. It's not that 45-minute. No, whatever,
it was common to have albums 60, 70 minutes long at this point. So this is on the shorter time for that era.
You know, but I listen. This is what I'm going to say about when I said it goes from strongest to worst. It's not huge drop-offs. I'm not saying like 5150, you know, OU812, and then it's like, you know, it's not like that. It's kind of like this for me. You know what I mean?
Right. Okay.
I think, you know, in every record, there's a lot of good stuff in there. To me, and this is the thing, going back to what I originally said, when you hear Sammy Hagar after a while, and then you go back and listen to like David Lee Roth, it's just like, to me, it's like, goodness Christ, where did he come up with this lyric? What is the attitude? Like, it's still kind of stunning to me.
Hmm.
When I listen to Sammy, incredible vocalist, incredible range, but I don't get that same thing. And I guess because original is original.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I just think that, yes, it's nearly impossible to do what Van Halen did, to your point earlier,
Right.
to potentially get even stronger. Maybe they did if you look at success, and I just feel like overall Van Halen missed so many opportunities. I mean, if
Well,
you think
yes,
about this,
that goes without saying, yes.
after this, they had Van Halen 3, and then for so many years, nothing. And I know
Well, this is
supposedly,
95, and they only put out 2
right,
more studio albums after this.
which is a shame.
Yeah.
It's a shame.
One with
And,
Gary, which bombed, which, oh, by the
right.
way, today is the 26th anniversary of them announcing that Gary was joining the band.
Oh wow, look at that! A lot
So,
on this October 4th.
a lot of Van Halen history on October 4th. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it was 26 years ago today. And I'll say this, if you like that song Feeling, which you were just talking about, and I'm so glad you called that out first, because when I was telling you to re-listen to the album, I wanted to tell you so badly. And if you don't listen to the last song, I'm going to be mad at you, because last year I did my top 20 Van Halen songs, and that did not make it on my list. And it was the last song I scratched off. It would probably have been 21. And I could have made a case of putting it in my top 20. I happen to think it's a great song. But anyway, going back to the Gary album for a moment, there's also a song on that album called Year to the Day, which is very much like Feeling. I'll even say Gary sounds a little bit like Sammy. And it's another one. He's great Eddie solo in it, same type of feel to it. I'm not a huge fan of the Gary album, but if you Van Halen fans, if you like the song Feeling, go listen to Year to the Day. It's another song. Van Halen's. Yeah.
Van Halen's. Yeah.
Yeah, Van Halen's, yeah. And I happen to like the song Without You that they did with Gary also, but just listen to the song Year to the Day. And I know we're talking about the Sammy era, but give that song another listen if you haven't, because that's a good one.
I think the bottom line to this all, like, as if I'm doing the wrap up here, but I'm not, because we're but because we got to get to the
Rarities list. But I want to talk a few other little fun facts about the Balance album. But go ahead, you first.
But just let's take the 4 records themselves, as a package, as a set, because we're talking about this because they're releasing this, and then we get to the Rarities. These are, in my opinion, 4 strong records. They're in some ways they're different, in some ways they're not. As I said, with Balance, I just feel like, I don't know, it's just, and again, if I gave it another 3 listens for the next 3 days, I might have a difference of opinion. This is
well, it has one of the worst album covers. I'll give you that. Friggin' album cover is a train wreck. But I'll say this: the box set they put out with all the Sammy albums, to me, it's 3 great albums and 1 clunker. And I think I've made my case of which one I think the clunker is.
I know. I disagree with you on that, but
that's okay.
I'd be curious to see how people feel. About OU812.
So the song I Can't Stop Loving You. Oh, really? Can't Stop Loving You. Do you know the reference when he's saying, "Hey Ray, what you said is true"? Do you know what he's referencing there?
No.
Ray Charles had a song. Ray Charles had a song called "I Can't Stop Loving You."
Oh, okay.
Which I never knew until recently. So Ray Charles had a song called.
I see that in the Wikipedia here.
Oh, really? Okay, that's funny. Yeah. So it was a little tip of the cap to Ray Charles there. But hey, Ray, what you said is true, acknowledging that he had a song with the same title, which I never knew that for so many years, and it's only like the last, I guess, 5-10 years that I knew that. I also never knew, even though I'll say it's one of my top 5 Van Halen songs, is "Don't Tell Me What Love Can Do." Yeah. That song was influenced by the death of Kurt Cobain.
Oh, okay.
So when he sings like, is it right to take the easy way out? He's talking about Kurt Cobain killing himself, and at one point, he's saying he doesn't want to judge that. And then when he says, I see the damage done. Oh Lord, I heard the shotgun. He's talking about Kurt Cobain killing himself, and I never knew that. As much as I was a Nirvana fan, as much as I was a Van Halen fan, and I love the song. On some days, I could actually say the song "Don't Tell Me What Love Can Do" might be my favorite Van Halen song. That's how much I love that song. I just love the crunchy guitar riff in it. I love Sammy's voice in this song. I absolutely love that song. And to me, it's one of the heaviest songs that Van Halen ever did. But I never knew until probably recently that was about Kurt Cobain. It was like on the anniversary of his passing, they were talking about songs and things about him. And I was like, wait, that Van Halen song is about him? What? I had no idea. And I'll say this also, I happen to love the song "Not Enough" on this album. I think it's, in my opinion, Van Halen's best ballad by far. And if you have a chance, check out the performance they did on David Letterman, right? It was a good,
Okay.
it was a really good performance, you know, and obviously, you know, everybody who played there, you know, played with David Letterman's band as well. So that was I happen to love this album and I love those songs. The song Amsterdam also, I told you I'm going to throw some fun facts at you. Yeah. The song Amsterdam, the guitar riff, and you'll enjoy this actually. I only found this like a few weeks ago, actually. You know, I was in Amsterdam on a business trip. And I was like, ah, well, I'm in Amsterdam. I got to listen to the song Amsterdam while I'm here. It's just appropriate. And I'll say Sammy's lyrics really summed up the Amsterdam experience perfectly. But the guitar riff was written in 1985.
Oh, that's cool.
For 5150. And there's a video online. This is the part I'm saying you would like, of Eddie in the studio, first noodling on the guitar and basically writing the riff to the song right there on the spot in the studio in 1985. Awesome. Yeah. So I sometimes wonder what happened that he sat on that riff for 10 years, because I happen to think that's another great song on this album. I love that song. But he sat on that riff for 10 years. So when you were saying there's nothing new on this album, I was chuckling to myself. I'm like, well, that riff is 10 years old. You're right about that. But
yeah,
I still think it's a great song and a great riff. So I love this album. Like I said, on any given day, I could make a case that this is my favorite Sammy album, although I'll go with For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge, but I really love this album.
Yeah. And, you know, one of the things that, you know, I always go from a tech standpoint, you know, one of the things, you know, as I've tried to come more into my own of playing guitars, you know, I can never stay on one
Speaking
thing.
of which, wait, hold on. Don't you have an Eddie guitar?
Oh yeah, I just happen to have one right here. As a matter of fact.
It's right there. I didn't even notice that it was right there.
So this actually, I did a little research on these PV Wolfgangs came out, and yes, they were called the Wolfgang. You see right there.
Yeah.
These came out in '96, which was a year after. Now he may have had some prototypes. I was trying to find out what guitars he used, because before, you know, for years he had the whole Kramer endorsement, and then he had Music Man had his own model, and then went to the PV, and then the Eddie Van Halen branded EVH. So this little guy, you know, sometimes I go into the equipment. So this is what they call a lunchbox head. This is actually an Eddie Van Halen branded amplifier. And so the whole idea with this whole thing with the Eddie Van Halen thing is that, you know, there's a book out called Tone Chaser. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
No.
No?
No, I don't think
it's a book on Eddie Van Halen.
Okay.
And a guy who was with him for like 25 years. And it's a really thick book, and it's supposed to be really, really good. It's trying, you know, there's only one Eddie Van Halen. I saw a recent interview where Nuno Betancourt was with Rick Beato, and he was with Eddie, and he goes, you know, and at the guy, he's like, hey, you know, want to try my rig? You want to try my rig? And he's like, and now there's Nuno Betancourt. He's no schlub, you know?
Right.
And I think I even heard this with George Lynch. And when he tried to play, it didn't sound like Eddie Van Halen, like the sound, like, you know, Eddie's hands, Eddie's equipment, whatever. It's Eddie, you know? But the whole thing with listening to these records, and this is what I'm getting to with the equipment, is that people are still, you know, chasing that Eddie Van Halen tone. Like there's so much knowledge you have now about what was used. We didn't know this stuff back in the day. It wasn't really published as much. And then people started reissuing, and Eddie was very much a part of designing a guitar like that or an amplifier like that before he passed. And it's as much as I'll never even be a fraction of Eddie Van Halen, you could hit a certain chord and you hear kind of that tone, and and I can't explain it to you, the hairs that could go up on your arm, or you put that phaser on, that flanger on, and you try to play the intro of you know, Ain't Talk About Love. You know, it's just, you know, I guess my point being to this whole thing is that going back and listening to these Van Halen records, whether it's Sammy or Dave, it's just a wonderful journey. It's great music. You know how I feel about today's music. You know, it just totally obliterates anything that's out. You know, and when I start nitpicking about, well, I don't really like this song, I'm like, yeah, I might listen to this, you know, 1,000 times. You know, some of the worst stuff of some of the, you know, popular music. I know, you know, there are still some artists that put out. I mean, Wolfgang, you the Mammoth record and stuff like that. He's put out some good stuff, but I think that's the most fun, is going back and really listening to this stuff, and kind of really how I listen to music. And I'm not just me, I'm not trying to say that in like some sort of egotistical way, is I listen to really everything, the vocal, how it's produced, is there delay on the vocal? How did they, is that a real acoustic or is that electric acoustic? Like I'm digging like those type of things for that kind of, what were they thinking? Why did they do that? That's sort of, and I love that the records kind of are very identifiable as being their own entities. Even though I said that balance, I didn't feel like they reinvented itself. It doesn't sound like any of the other records, in my opinion, which
definitely
that's the good thing, So I want to make that clear. I wasn't saying like balance sounds like OU812 or like For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge, I wasn't trying to, say that.
No, I never, and that's a great point to me. All 4 albums do sound very different from each other. And, like I can never hear Don't Tell Me What Love Can Do on OU812.
Right, exactly.
Just like I probably can't imagine Mine Oh Mine being on Balance. It's just, they're very different records. I think to me, the biggest thing that disappoints me with Van Halen is what a lost opportunity. So to me, the fact that they've only had 4 albums with Sammy, whatever it is, like 6, 7 albums, I think 7 albums with Dave, it just leaves me wanting more. To me, there was the fact that they only put out 2 albums since '95. It's just like, that's disappointing. And that's why, to me, when I first heard about this box set and it having Rarities on it, I was like, hey, all right, this will be cool if there's an album of demos and outtakes and things like that. And I think when you first heard about it, you were really excited and you were like, we got to talk about this. There's new Van Halen material coming out. And I said, there's really not. There's 8 songs on there, and I've seen half of those songs in concert, let alone the fact that I have them all already. I've seen them perform half of those songs in concert. They are not Rarities. And I again, just like had this disappointing feeling with Van Halen. And I understand, there's a lot with the brothers, and obviously Eddie's passed. And Eddie was very opinionated about not releasing like demos and stuff that wasn't finished and all of that. And I know on 5150 there's a song called I Want Some Action, right, which there's a demo floating around. And honestly, you can make a case it might have been one of the 3 to 5 best songs on that album. It definitely would have been the best song probably on OU812. I mean, it had a lot of potential. And I think people were hoping when they heard Rarities, hey, maybe a nice finished version of that and a clean version, and then we just get 8 songs that were B-sides or on greatest hit packages. I mean, last year I did my top 20 Van Halen song countdown, and the song Humans Being, which is on this Rarities disc, was in my top 10 Van Halen songs. So it's not rare.
It's mislabeled. It's mislabeled. They should not have called that Rarities. And to what you said, when I saw the video of Michael Anthony and Sammy talking about this thing, and one of the songs they were talking about, I forgot the song, about somebody who had passed. Anyways,
like Fly or something like that. I don't know.
That's the Foo Fighters,
right.
or Learn to Fly, or
Learn to Fly, yeah,
or Pink Floyd, Learning to Fly. No, I immediately said to you, oh, this looks cool. And then you were like, well, what songs are on here? And then you sent me like every one of them that's already like in digital form.
I sent you them links to them in Apple Music.
Apple Music, yeah.
Like, all right, you could stream every one of these songs legitimately today on Apple Music.
Yeah, that was disappointing, and I don't know what should they have called it? B-sides, alternate? I don't know, but Rarities.
Yeah, to me, it's nice in the sense that you're putting out a box and you're including every official song that you released with Sammy, and some of these songs never were on vinyl before, so some of the albums were never on vinyl before either. So to me, that's nice from that point of view. But I even dug this out because it's a little bit of show and tell for me today, right? So here is the Black and Blue 45. And the reason I bought it, could you see what the B-side is there? Yeah. Right? It's the first song on the Rarities thing, right? This is 19. And it's funny because I bought this because I thought wrongly that this was a non-album cut, right? And I bought the 45 because it wasn't on the album when I bought it in 1988. So I had to have it and I happen to think it's a great song, and I've seen them do it in concert actually. But it says on here, this song is available on compact disc only. So I didn't even realize that here it is. I have the 45 for whatever it is, 30 something years. The
Yeah.
song was actually available on the original CD release that they put out in
Yeah.
1988.
I think I
It's-
saw that when I was looking at the discography before.
I'm like, now again, 1988, not a lot of people were buying CDs. I understand that, right? Myself included here. And that's why, I've had it only on vinyl all these years. But a rarity, that's not. I mean, the song Humans Being, I think they put out a video for the damn song. It was in the Twister soundtrack. If I remember right, I could have sworn I've seen a video for that song. So,
Yeah.
it's a little disappointing, but again, I get that the brothers and, holding that vault close to the vest, but, call it B-sides or something like that. It's cool to have all the Sammy stuff in one area and on our vinyl in one box, but they're not rarities.
Yeah. I agree.
So
That being said, it's a nice package. I mean, I think
yes,
we're going to agree on that for the price if you buy the CD or the vinyl.
yes,
What vinyl costs usually per LP. I think the vinyl I saw on Amazon was about $107.
okay,
And you're getting, I guess, 5 LPs.
right, yep. The four
I'm not sure, but
studio
you know what?
albums.
I don't know if the only thing with that, I'm not sure on the vinyl if you get the rarities. I'm not positive on that.
Oh, you have to.
Uh,
You have to.
Well, let's see. We'll find that out. I know on the CD you definitely do, and obviously digital. Let's see. I know I wanted to check that out.
But to me, that would be
so
a
the
big selling
collection
point of this.
2. So now the vinyl is 119. I think it was maybe a little cheaper a week ago. Sometimes those prices fluctuate.
Yep, of course. Yeah.
So it's interesting. Disc 1, it only has 5. I don't know why it looks like this, but it says disc 1, disc 2, disc 3, disc 4. Like disc 4 says humans being, it's about time, up for breakfast and learning to see. Obviously, it's not only 4 songs on disc 4. So,
Right.
and disc 1 says good enough. Why can't this be love? Get up, dreams, summer night. So maybe I don't know why it's late. This is just mislabeling, but it says number disc 5. So
okay.
So yeah, that would have been a bit egregious.
Yes, and Kathy Lee.
And Kathy Lee and Michael Strahan
Yes.
and whoever else.
Oh man, but just I guess in closing, I started off by saying probably I'm a Van Halen fan. I like both eras of the band. I even like some of the Gary stuff. I probably lean 55-45 towards the Sammy era, maybe for no other reason, but just because that's what I grew up with as a teenager, right?
Yeah.
That's not to say that I don't like Dave. I don't, Dave, as a lead singer will be more remembered than Sammy, even though I like Sammy better. How would you weight your fandom between the two in percentages?
Probably 70-30.
Okay. Interesting.
Probably 70-30. Yeah.
And is that simply from your love of Dave and those albums? I mean, it sounds like from what we were talking about, it's not that you dislike the Sammy albums. It's just that you love the Dave ones that much.
I think, that first Van Halen record, again, we debated this with the Kiss record, first Kiss album, and Hotter Than Hell or Rock and Roll Over. Said that the first album is just incredible. Agreed. Think about what sounded like that at the time. Nothing, it's just
it's my favorite Van Halen album is Van Halen 1.
I mean, it's just and just so, but I just and then just seeing again the recent footage that emerged of David Lee Roth is that one point where Michael Anthony leads over and he does a backflip on Michael Anthony's back, and I'm like, who does that? Like, I was just like, wow, like. Yes. Damn, I wish I would have seen them in there and with Dave on that tour, but I was a big fan of of the Van Halen or Van Hagar era. I had at least 3 of the 4 records. I bought all of them when they came out, so it wasn't like I was but I just that going back.
Did you ever see Van Halen with Sammy Hagar in concert?
Yeah, I did. I'm trying to remember when that was. I saw them at Jones Beach. It might have been around 93 or somewhere around that era. At that time frame. Okay. I did.
I wonder. So I don't think they were touring in 93. So 91-ish would have been for Unlawful Carnal Knowledge. 95 would have been Balanced. So I wonder.
I think it might have been 95. I think it might have been 95 when I come to think of it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know why I didn't go to that tour. I love the album. I was buying the album. So you weren't buying the album and supporting the band, but you saw them in concert. I was buying the album and I didn't go to concert.
Yeah, it was one of those things. I think somebody got in the ticket, asked me if I wanted to go. It was like I was actively looking at, me, I was never been a huge concert goer, and it was one of those things. And I just remember it was at Jones Beach.
Yeah, and probably that means it was during the summer. I had just gotten
Yes.
married, so I could have been either A, on my honeymoon, B, just back and not looking to go out to a concert or whatever. But
Yeah.
I regret not going to that tour because I like that
Yeah.
that album, that tour. So oh well,
Yeah.
water under the bridge.
Yeah.
Nothing I can do about it now. But all right. I'll be curious to see what people think. So the 4 Van Halen albums with Sammy Hagar, I'm curious to see how people would rank them, right? You say you go in order of release, whereas I think that the back 2 are the stronger albums. And I certainly think that, 5150 is very close neck and neck. But I'm curious what the viewers and listeners think. What's your favorite Van Halen album with Sammy? Don't give me Dave albums. What's your favorite Van Halen album with Sammy? What's your least favorite album? And I'm curious what people have to say about that. And what do you think of the Rarities album that they're putting out with this box set? Do you feel cheated? Are you happy that you're getting all the Sammy stuff in one spot? I'm curious what people think about that. And I think that pretty much wraps us up here, buddy.
Sounds good. Yeah.
Yeah. Well then, on that note, I, as always, thank everybody for listening. We look forward to your feedback and your comments. And we leave you with not one, but 2. Later, everybody.
Viva Van Halen.
Ooh, Van Halen's. All right, these are very well done. Later, everybody.
All right, later.
Alrighty, there you have it. Our thoughts and our comments about Van Halen during the Sammy Hagar years. We'd love to hear your thoughts and comments as well. Let us know if you are a Sammy fan, what percentage of fandom did you relate to each side? You heard me say I'm more like 55-45 towards Sammy, whereas Vin's more like 70-30 towards Dave. Of course, there's no wrong answers, and we really look forward to hearing and seeing what you have to say. We also want to hear and see what you have to say about what your favorite and least favorite Sammy Hagar Van Halen album is. So we really look forward to reading your comments. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit that subscribe button below. If you're listening to one of my podcasts, subscribe over there as well. Also, head on over to Facebook and follow my page, The Rock Experience with Mike Brunn, where each and every day we talk about all the rock and roll music that you love. You could also follow me on Instagram and Twitter as well. That's it for this episode. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. See you all next time.